What's going on, everybody? It's Dan, back with another Moonshine talking. Today I am going to discuss, or tonight I should say, I'm going to discuss some of my favorite opponents that I've ever had. This would be more of a wrestling talk thing. So if you're not interested, I'll catch up with you on the next one. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. I did want to show off a couple things. I'm going to try something different, try playing a little music in the background. I don't know if it can be heard or not, but a couple things I was spinning earlier tonight. I was spinning this one, Deceased, as the Weird Travel On. I was enjoying that one, and currently I am playing Sadistic Force, Midnight Assassin, off of Goat Throne Records. These guys are a Texas-based black thrash band. That's that's them, Sadistic Force. Actually, when Revic from More Than Red said that the band was going on Goat Throne, I was excited about that because I was familiar with these guys. But yeah, that was that. I also wanted to show real quick. I got a couple of frames, so I was able to frame that autographed insert that I got for the clutch vinyl that I got, and I kept the sticker from the front of the vinyl because I figure I'm not going to sell it, but if ever came the day that I decided I had to or wanted to, at least have that to make it sweeten the deal a little bit. And this one I actually had on the wall, but I didn't have a frame for it because the frame that I had for it I broke because I'm a dummy and don't know how to put stuff up correctly. So one day I was working out when I had the when the weight room was in one of the smaller rooms that I have here, and fell off the wall. It was glass, hit the dumbbells, shattered, and I was like, oh, okay, that's lovely. So yeah, that was that. So I got one that's a little more shatterproof. And then it's just iced tea, nothing else. Cheers. Slancha, salut, whatever you say. Nozdrovia. And this thing is pretty cool. This I got at Christmas time a couple of years ago from my buddy Derek, and it is the WWE Encyclopedia of Sports Entertainment. You can see that it's got all sorts of facts and figures and stats and whatnot. All the guys that ever worked in WWE over the years, kind of give you a general idea of some of the stuff. There's the man, Andre the Giant. I'm sure you saw that rather briefly. Show it again. Yeah, there he is, the eighth wonder of the world. So you just had Brian Pillman in there. Well, let's just kind of go through there. Oh, the Sheiky baby. Iron Sheik. Sure, most of you old school heads, you know who that is. A lot of the old school teams and singles people. But it pretty much covers everybody who's ever worked for WWE over the years. As far as some notable things that were fun for me, a couple guys that I've actually had the pleasure of sharing the ring with. There was I'm trying to stalling for time a little bit just to find them. But up in the corner here, if you can see it, is the Gemini. That's what that says, and that is Mike and Todd Shane. That's also Haku. Some of you may know, but the baddest man in pro wrestling by many, many, many accounts. There we go. The lighting changed for me. Bless your heart. Yeah, they were Jesse and Jake, but they were also that was Mike and Todd Shane. They were Malenko guys, and they had a little bit of a run with a guy named Simon Dean who wrestled in ECW as Nova. He was doing Simon Dean was kind of a rib because that's Dean's name. It's just Dean Simon, and that's what they did. They made him like a person. He had like a evil personal trainer gimmick. Which fun story. I'm pretty sure that they ripped us off from the school because one day one of the students that was there, we were talking and we were trying to come up with gimmicks for him, and we came up with this gimmick, Kip Feinberg, personal trainer, and the whole thing. It was just silly because he used to do these. I'm gonna get up and make an ass of myself real quick when they were teaching him how to do kicks. You know, you kind of do that, and when he would do them, the way he was doing them, if you can see it, I'm gonna try to. Yeah, here we go. He would do these sorts of things, and he looked like a friggin' rockette. So he looked silly, and we were just sitting there. We were goofing around, me and my buddies who I trained with and shared a place with, and we were trying to come up with gimmicks for him and some of the other guys, and that's what we came up with is Kip Feinberg, and he thought it was ridiculous and had no interest in doing it. So I think somewhere along the way, somebody remembered it, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember some of the students at the school. They thought that this was a good idea. So and just the fact that it was Dean Simon, just Simon Dean, it was just like okay, it was too close, and there are no coincidences. I don't think so. But that's a whole other story for another time about all the gimmicks that I think got ripped off from me and my buddies over the years. But again, that's a story for another time. Then another guy who I worked a six man with is this gentleman right here, Vito, Vito Lagrazzo. He used to wrestle in ECW back in the day, Skull Von Crush. He was up in the Northeast Indies for a while. He was Johnny Rod's guy, who was a famous enhancement talent over the years back in the 70s. And he trained a lot of guys, trained a lot of ECW guys, Tommy Dreamer, Dudley Boys, a couple other people. But yeah, that was Vito. And then there's a couple other people in there who I know or worked with or actually, I'll show. I've mentioned her before, but Molly Hollow, Nora Greenwald, she's in here too. I'll just point her out. But she was also, she's the one who, if anybody saw the video, I told the story about working in the ring with her, and she ended up hit me in the nuts when she was doing a move. We were doing a lucha libre spot. There she is, Nora. Yeah, sweetest girl in the world. She's super cool. But yeah, she was fun to work out with, and she came to the school and trained with us. She trained with Macho Man Randy Savage for a little while before that. But yeah, so was that. So like I said, I wanted to talk about some of the people who were my favorite opponents over the years. So let's just get into it. First one is my buddy Kevin, Sean Christain. I mentioned him numerous times. Have a video posted up on my page of the two of us working together. Kevin and I we trained at a Malenko's at the same time. He was a roommate. We used to hang out all the time. Just a chemistry that the two of us had that couldn't be explained. Sometimes we could just do things almost telepathically with each other, and we knew what the other one was thinking. And it's stuff like that. Sometimes that's an intangible that you don't get with a lot of people. So it was always a pleasure working with him. Kevin was severely underrated. He's very talented. I think that he was somebody who should have been in that class and that conversation of guys from that generation that pioneered, paved the way for the style that Dean and Eddie, Benoit, Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, a bunch of other lucha libre guys, the Japanese guys, all the people that fused all the various styles together, the British strong style, all these things that kind of have culminated and manifested themselves into the modern American pro wrestling style. Kev should have been there with the Bryan Danielsons, the American Dragon, AJ Styles, Low Key, friggin' Roderick Strong, bunch of guys from like the Briscoe brothers, all names where some of you might be your eyes might be glazed over with who I'm talking about. But these are guys who came from my generation that kind of paved the way for the style that's the current thing right now. And some people don't like it, other people do. Some people think there's too much to it. But point being is that I think that had he gotten a little bit more work over time, that would have been something. I really feel like he would have been somebody who people would be talking about a lot more. But he's just another guy who, like a lot of us, just kind of slipped through the cracks of the wrestling industry. It happens, it's just is what it is. But yeah, Kevin's one of them. Second one is my boy Steve Madison. Steve was a student of Steve Kern and Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey. If you're familiar with Steve Kern, he was one of the members of the Fabulous Ones, famous tag team from the 80s. He came out of Florida. Had a good run there. Uh, Came one of the Fabs. Had a good run, particularly in the Memphis area, working with the Road Warriors, with Lawler's company. I think he did stuff with Lawler and Dundee. I could be mistaken. My buddy Mike, my old tag partner, probably be killing me if I'm wrong on that. Um, then he went to WWF. He did the gimmick Skinner, where he was this guy from the Everglades. He had a good run with Bret Hart. It was a fairly memorable gimmick. It didn't last long, but it was fairly memorable. People still talk about it a little bit to this day. He eventually went behind the scenes with WWE, became a producer, road agent, and then eventually, when WWE decided to move their developmental program to Florida from both Kentucky and Georgia, they tapped Kern to run the program, and Florida Championship Wrestling was reignited, reemerged as the developmental, and FCW became a thing, eventually merged into NXT, which is the current developmental program. And Steve was the one who got the ball rolling on that down here. And yeah, Madison, Steve Kern, not Steve Madison. I get confusing a little bit, but just roll with me. But yeah, Madison was one of his students. He was one of his best pupils. He was very knowledgeable. He had a good run, did a lot of enhancement stuff in WWE. He went to Japan on multiple tours. Actually, was supposed to have a little run over there as a in a gimmick called Power Fighter, but he ended up before he was set to go over there, he ended up hurting his ankle, so he couldn't go, which sucked. But he ended up doing multiple tours after that. He's worked with Vader, a bunch of other people. He's worked with Dusty Rhodes when Dusty had a company here. Uh, Steve's worked all over the Indies throughout the country. He's been all over the world and then Puerto Rico, Europe. He's an extremely highly regarded pro wrestler. He's retired now. He's a firefighter, has a family. He's a good dude. Loves a lot of the same music that I do. And he was always a pleasure to work with. He was always took care of me. Steve was just a level above me as far as talent, and he always made sure to cover up my weaknesses, whether it be my cardio at the time or my incapability to do something from an athletic perspective. And he was always a pleasure to work with, always fun. Like we say, you always had a night off working with him, even though if he wanted you to work, you were going to work, and he was going to make you work. So, but he was cool. I actually another one. I have one of our matches up on the YouTube channel. Check it out if you want. If not, that's cool too. Yeah, Steve Madison. Look him up if you feel froggy. He's a very talented guy who I feel like should get a little bit more recognition, but didn't. Another guy who should get a little more recognition, but didn't, who I feel should have had an opportunity, but just didn't, was another guy from here in Florida, a guy named Bruce Santee. Bruce trained probably a year after I did at a different school. It was called the Florida WrestlePlex. He trained with a gentleman named Navy SEAL Leroy Howard, and one of my trainers, Jeff Bradley, the original Dudley Dudley. And Bruce was awesome. He was state wrestling champion. He was a college athlete. He actually almost walked onto the Bucks, if you can believe that. Uh, Super tough, just super tough guy. Loved to fight. Fight at the drop of a hat, and could take most people. He was just a very capable dude. Funny bastard. I always loved being around Bruce because he's just if there's anyone who was made for pro wrestling, it was Bruce because he's so over the top and larger than life and just very outgoing and gregarious. And he just had a personality and a style and just a way about him that fit in the pro wrestling business. And he had a couple looks with WWE. He did a little bit with TNA here and there, a few spots here and there, but he never took off like I think many of us thought he might have. He just never went all the way like most of us were kind of like hoping for, like, oh, come on, man. But again, these things happen. It's nothing against him. It's nothing against the business. It is what it is. It's just sometimes it's not your time, and other people get the opportunities. You can't really explain it sometimes. But yeah, that was that. But I had a lot of fun working with Bruce. We worked a handful of matches, most singles, one tag match. The tag match was a disaster. it was just a combination of elements that did not need to be mixed. And at the end of the day, I wound up with a broken nose because I got thrown by Bruce, and this wasn't his fault. It's just something that happened. And the way I landed, I jackknifed, and my knees hit my own nose, and I ended up breaking my own nose, if you can believe that. And it was actually real funny because Bruce was pissed at that point because the match was falling apart. Everything, the whole thing was a disaster. There's people had personal stuff going on, coming into the match and the show, so it was just like it was Murphy's Law, and he's like screaming, "Ah, damn it, McCoy!" And then he picks me up and he sees I'm bleeding, and he was as nice as could be. He's, "What happened?" And I was just thinking to myself, broke my own nose. You threw me like a sack of flour. You don't know your own strength, damn it. But it happened. At the time, I really wasn't happy. I wasn't mad at him or anything. I was just mad at the situation, the match falling apart, getting injured, all that sort of stuff. I kind of complained about it in the car ride home, and I think a couple of guys I was in the car with, they stooged me off to the promoter, and I didn't get called back. They're kind of thinking I'm pussy or complaining, and or whatever the case might be, and just didn't want me around. So that was an excuse to get rid of me, which happens. Like I've mentioned before, I've lost multiple jobs in wrestling, so it wasn't the first time. Uh, wasn't going to be the last. So it is what it is. But one time, the same promotion that we had the tag match, we had a singles match, which I consider one of my favorite and best matches that I ever had in my time spent in wrestling. It was hard hitting. The thing people most remember about it is that at one point, because Bruce was told going into the match to gut check me, because again, I don't think the promoter really wanted me in the company. So he just wanted to see if he stuck me in the ring with a killer like Bruce and told Bruce to go gut check me, then maybe he'd just get rid of me, just run me off. I wouldn't want to take the heat, wouldn't want to take the shots or whatever the case might be. So you go tell Bruce to you send Bruce out there and have him throwing live rounds. Maybe that'll run me off. But it didn't. And Bruce liked me, and I liked Bruce, and we got along with each other. We had fairly good chemistry. So, and I knew going in that Bruce is going to beat the crap out of me. It is what it is. I'm not worrying about it. It's he's not going to kill me. It's not like he's going to slit my throat in the middle of the ring. I'm going to bleed out there in front of a bunch of fans. But the one most notable thing is we had a couple of chop spots set up. At one point, I shot him off the ropes, went for a clothesline. He ducks and chops me. Bruce has skillet-sized hands, and everybody said when he hit me, it sounded like a shotgun went off in the building. But it didn't. It just the shotgun was his hand cracking against my chest. I take the bump, boom, feed up into another one, which Madison, who was there, I rode with him that night. He was just like, "Bro, why did you get up?" It's like, "No, it was the spot. I don't know what to tell you." And then we just proceeded the rest of the match. I mean, he was throwing live rounds. I mean, they were coming hot and heavy. There was one point you do the old 10 punch in the corner, that gimmick, and he's just bouncing them off my skull. And it was like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing tonight. It is what it is. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people when we got to the back, they seemed genuinely excited and pleased with the match. I wish I've never seen it. I wish I could have seen it. Don't have a copy of it. All my best matches I don't have copies of. But it was a lot of fun, and like I say, it at least got me another shot with the company, and then we had the tag match, and then that was the end of that. So that was that. But Bruce, he's another guy. You want to look up Bruce Santee? He's pretty good. Matter of fact, Bruce is having his last match coming up here. If anyone is in the Central Florida area, it's going to be on May the 4th, whatever that Saturday is, May the 4th or May the 5th, whatever the stupid Star Wars pun is, it's that day. And he is wrestling my buddy Buckshot Brian Brock. Brian is one of the best independent talent out there in the country, in my opinion. And he's getting Bruce's last match, so that should be a fun, hard hitting affair. I'm gonna be there. I gotta be there. I gotta see my boys work and go support them. So if you happen to be in the Central Florida area, it's in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'll post a link in the description as far as the details of the match because I don't remember the exact venue. But that's going to be a fun one, and I'm going to enjoy being there for that one and see my boys, having probably a couple cervezas with them afterwards. But yeah, so that was that. That's that. And then the last two are notable because of their kind of their fame in the business and just some of what came with it. The first one I want to mention is Hack Meyers. Hack was he was a longtime indie veteran. He passed away in December of 2015. He had some nagging injuries, some nagging issues, and he went to Johns Hopkins University to get brain surgery. And he died a couple days before his 42nd birthday due to complications from the surgery. It sucked. I mean, Hack was a good dude. Actually, I rode with him once. We rode together at a show, and that was a debacle of a story in and of itself. And he ended up staying on my couch that night, and he was super cool. Enjoyed the little bit of time that I spent with him. It was weird because I was a huge ECW fan growing up, and to have somebody who Hack eventually went on to prominence. His most notable role in the business was as the Shah in ECW, Hack Meyers. And it was just weird having the Shah sleeping on my couch. It was just kind of one of those surreal events that happens in life where you're like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is cool, but it's so weird how wrestling, how it ebbs and flows and where it can go sometimes. But we had a match one time. I was working for a company, my buddy Madison's company, EWE, and they booked me with Hack. And it was a lot of fun. Another one where my nose didn't get broken that night, but we did a spot where I was face down, hanging off of the ring apron, and he did like what I call the old Fit Finley spot, where you take the guy's head and you pick it up and you bash it against the side of the ring apron. Well, I didn't put my hands up, so of course, hit right on the corner of the apron. That's one of the hardest parts of the ring, if not the hardest. So of course, smash right up against a plank, and yeah, just starts flowing. So these things happen. But the best part about the match was in ECW, Hack used to have this gimmick where whenever he would hit an offensive maneuver, since he was the Shah, the crowd would yell Shah. And if he was on the defense, they'd yell shit. So it's basically if he was throwing three punches, be Shah, Shah, Shah. He'd wind up for the big one. Oh, Shah. And then he'd scream, the crowd would go nuts. It was the beginnings of crowd participation in pro wrestling. And then if he'd miss something, like say he'd go for a clothesline, the guy duck, throw a suplex, the crowd yell shit. So it was just fun. It'd be Shah, Shah, Shah. Oh, miss suplex shit. It was a lot of fun. It was always fun doing that. So we're working together one night. We're doing this match, and we're in the ring. We're doing stuff, and it was a cool crowd, and they were very knowledgeable. And at one point, he's sitting there, he's throwing his punches, and I hear the crowd just go Shah, 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 and I'm just sitting there taking these things, and I'm just thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing I've ever experienced in my life up until this point. This is awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was a great pleasure working with Hack. It was a great pleasure getting to know him a little bit, getting to hang out with him. And yeah, it sucked when he passed. And I guess the one good thing you can say is usually in wrestling, it's either an OD or a suicide or something awful like car going off the road or something like that. And it sucks sucks how he passed, but at least in a certain manner, at least it was kind of natural causes and not something where it was like you just another wrestling statistic. So anyhow, so that was that. Rest in peace, Hack. He was a good dude. I enjoyed the time I spent with him, enjoyed being in the ring with him. And that was that. And then finally, because we're running long here, as always. Hopefully you've all stuck with me to this point. If you haven't, I understand. Most people like the wrestling talk, and hearing me babble on for a half hour probably gets a little draining and droning. But if you stick around to the end here, you'll get to hear one of the cooler stories that I have as far as people that I've been in the ring with. I got to wrestle Ox Baker. If some of you don't know who Ox Baker is a legendary veteran wrestler. He started in 1964, and probably most notably, he's known by a lot more people uh, for being in the movie Escape from New York with Kurt Russell. When Kurt Russell was in the ring fighting the guy, Knox had a really unique look. He had a shaved head, big burly handlebar mustache. He was one of the not the originator, but more the innovator of the heart punch. And a couple times over the years, he was in the ring with people who afterwards they had actual, because they're older guys, they had heart disease or something or other, and they died of heart attacks. So they always put it over like Ox killed them with the heart punch. And then one time he was in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was working Big Cat Ernie Ladd, and Ernie was huge back in the day as far as a talent and also huge man, but he was super over wherever he went. And they did a whole thing where Ox kept hitting him with the heart punch. He just kept hitting him with the heart punch, and it started a riot. And it's amazing how back in the day you could do that. You really nowadays you don't really get riots happening, but that was kind of the fervor that wrestling would cause in people back in the day. And so Ox was another one. He was larger than life, very cool guy. The story behind that was I was working for the small indie promotion down here in Florida back in 2008, and the promoter was a money mark. What I mean by that is he was just a guy who wanted to spend a bunch of money to hang out with the wrestlers, hang out with the boys, especially if they were guys who had names. So we'd have like IAK was on the shows, Ox was on the shows, Tony Atlas, if any of you remember Tony Atlas, he was on the shows. He'd do indies all over the place. I'd run into him constantly. Uh, but a couple other people, sorry, I'm banging against the table here. And then a bunch of the indie guys, we would all be on the shows working with all these people. So they wanted to put guys in the ring with guys like Ox and Tony who were safe, who they could have matches with, and they weren't going to kill them. They weren't going to try and do too much with them. So the first night, it was a weekend's worth of shows. They stick me in the ring with Ox. We go out there, and uh, I'm asking one of the veteran guys on the show who I knew. I was like, "What do I do?" And he says, "Just don't do anything. Just bump your ass around for him. That's all you can do. Just make him look like $1 million. He's not gonna be able to really move. So whenever he hits you, just flop around like a fish." So we do the whole match, and he let me get off a little bit. He was very gracious in the ring with me, and I had to pretty much dial it back because at that time I was starting to incorporate more, like, even though I was doing the hillbilly gimmick, I was incorporating more strong style. Even though I never totally got away from it, but I was working with a bunch of guys who would do that, so it would kind of bleed its way out sometimes in my work. So I had to really dial it back and keep my punches and forearm shots and broad arms and stuff like that super, super feather light. And plus, he's a big dude. He could probably, if he really wanted to, there's no such thing as an old giant. So you got to be careful with that. He could have probably killed me at his age, at pushing 80. So did the match, heart punch, bing bang boom, 1 2 3. He goes over. Next night we get to the show, get to the locker room, and first thing I see is Tony Atlas, and he's like, "Where's that Frankie? Tell Frankie that's the kid I want to work. Go get Frankie. Tell Frankie I want to work with the hillbilly." And but anyhow, Ox is like, "No, he's working with me tonight. We're working together." And one of my buddies made a joke about how, what did they do? Just build the ring around him so he didn't have to move. And it was just very funny, just kind of an offhanded comment. But yeah, I got to work with him, and it was just super cool because, as far as I know, it's actually funny. I was doing some research to talk about him and make some notes about him, and I looked on Wikipedia, and apparently I was the last singles match he ever had. So I'm on Wikipedia, which is kind of hilarious and weird, but is what it is. So yeah, as far as, I mean, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is at least some of the guys over the years who I've gotten to work with, who I had the pleasure to work with, spend time in the ring with. There's plenty more who I've gotten to work with over the years that I was proud to have spent time in the ring with. So yeah, there's that. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Uh, Hope you keep checking out the content, liking it, commenting on it. I know this one's a little bit long, but hopefully you enjoy it regardless. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I got for you on this one. So as always, stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Always tuck the chin upon impact. Don't forget to breathe. Farewell from the Sunshine State, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.